In this video, I'm going to show you bass layering techniques to get your bass from sounding like this to this. I'll show you how to properly utilize a sub, and you'll get my own personal sub preset to be used in Serum. I'll show you how to properly EQ mid and top bass so it works with your low end. And I'll show you how to widen, saturate and distort your bass so it sounds great on big systems, small systems and headphones. In this session, I'm going to be showing you bass layering, processing and techniques that I use in a track that was released on Gorgon City's Realm Records. The track was called Sensation. Now, in this, I'm going to be showing you the process I use to get the bass how I wanted it to sit in the mix. And I'll also be showing you how to understand why and when to use these in your production phase. Now, we're actually looking at the mix down project, but as we go through the process, I'll talk you through how and why I chose to split the bass into different layers. So let's have a listen to the before and after. So the before is the before the processing. Have a listen to the drums, have a listen to how the bass is really overpowering everything, and you can't really hear the kick properly, and the drums are really stifled. When we go to A, hear how the bass becomes under control, more present, more wide, and also how you feel the top end and the kick of the drums really come to life. Check this out. It's crazy how even just by controlling your low end, your top end of your drums come out. So let's go through this and I'll show you exactly what we did. So firstly, let me show you the different layers. I'm going to take off the processing we got here. Now essentially at the moment, I've got 3 basses, 2 mid layers going into a bus. In this bus, we've just got a track spacer, which is ducking the kick. And we've got this EQ here, which is doing some things for later on. It's mixing the kick and bass. And these are really controlling how it's interacting with other elements in the track. We don't need to look at that. Firstly, let me play through the layers. We've got the mid bass, which was the main riff that I come up with. Now we've got mid bass 2. I just wanted to give it a bit of texture. And we've got a sub. Now the reason I've added the sub, and this is something that you're gonna probably find in your productions, you may play a bass line like this, obviously it doesn't have to be this bass line, and then you may try to process it, but realize you can't get the low end information. Now look here, this is the reason why we've actually added a sub layer. We've got a lot of kind of like top mid bass, but we've got no sub information. This is the real weight of a track. Sometimes you can process this with something like R bass or low air and you can achieve sub information. But there's times that you're playing in a key that you might be playing higher notes, or the type of key you're playing, you just can't naturally get the sub information to work. So this is the reason you would employ a sub layer. Now check this. If we just look at the spectrum when I add the sub layer in, watch us fill this layer up. This frequency band here. See now here, this is all full. If I remove this, we're light, and this is with no processing on the bass at the moment, bar the side chain that we've got going on. So that's the reason why I've employed a sub layer. Now, quite simply to do this, all you need to do is copy your MIDI information to another synthesizer. In this, I use Serum, and here's a preset, and I'll give you guys the preset. It's very simple. It's on the default setting. I've gone down 1 octave. I've added the sub 2 octaves down, and then I've lowered the cutoff. If I play a bass note, you'll hear what it sounds like. So super low sub, exactly what you need. So if you're playing your basses and you really like the tone of your top layer and you can't get it to work, this is why you would utilize a sub layer. Quite simply, layer an octave down, add a sub like this in, and you're going to get this result here. So let's have a listen to the individual elements again. So we've got the sub, you just hear that side chaining, we've got 2 mid basses. Let's start with the sub first. So I'm going to mute these. All we're going to do the sub layer is we're going to split our bass into 2 bands essentially. What we're going to do is we're going to, around at 120 Hertz, around here, we're going to roll off the top layer of the sub bass, so we only get this sub information. In our mid basses, we're going to roll off the bottom layer, so we only have the kind of top end, low mid information. Now this gives us the control we need, and we can do some very cool processing after that. So let's do that. I'll firstly open up Q3, and I've rolled this off. I'll do that together with you. It's quite easy actually to do this. Type 120 Hertz in. I've got this in linear phase mode. We'll have a look at that. The sub already has no top end information because I've utilized the filter cutoff in Serum. But we'll do this anyway for argument's sake, because your sub may have more top end information in it. Right, the next thing we're going to do, mid bass 2. So I'm going to mute that sub, and I'm going to do the same thing here in the opposite. So add a low cut, 12 dB shelf. So wait, add a low cut at 12 dB, put it in 120 Hertz, and you can see we're removing this information here. If I take this off now and we listen to it with the sub bass, you're going to hear these clash. And that's the muddiness you was hearing straight away when we did our initial A/B. Let's have a listen to these two together now with the music. So let's remove this. Here, bass is becoming under control. Too much bass. Quite simply because we got too much going on in these 2 layers. So we're utilizing our sub for this, this portion of our track. So we don't need anything from our other bass in there. And that's why we're adding the Q3. And rolling off up to 120. Let's add the next mid bass in, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do it as you can hear it. Get Q3 up, turn it on. Okay, in this one, I've gone a little bit higher, and I'm at 30 Hertz in this, as I felt there was a bit too much low end information, and we'll listen to it and hear why. Listen to it with the sub. And this is not always going to be, you might not always have to go up to 130 or 120, it may be somewhere in between the two. As a good rule of thumb, start at 120. And let's hear everything together. So now if I remove this EQ I've got on here, again, you're hearing it really clear up that low end. I've got this set on linear phase mode. Now you may be wondering, why is this set to linear phase mode? So when you're EQing a lot of things together, I like to put it in linear phase mode to time all the EQs. Essentially, every time you're adding an EQ on, you're adding a tiny bit of latency. And because we're processing all these together, we want them to be locked so we don't get phase information. So turning linear phase mode on for all the EQs really helps that out. So let's have a listen to this now in the track. Again, I'll remove the basses so you can hear what that does. With that low end coming overpowered. You hear a lot of low end, but now it's, messing up the kick, and it's messing up how even the top end of the drums are sounding. Let's do an A/B. Get A/B up again for you guys. Okay, so now what is really good about this? The reason why splitting it up really helps, not only just to control your low end, but now I can also create a mix in terms of how I want my sub level to be and my mid bass. So I can turn these independently up or down to really get I can turn them independently up or down to really get the mix of the mid bass. But the real beauty here is what we're going to be doing now to the mid bass. Now, I could do 3 processes to this to create width, saturation, and some bit crushing crunch. Now, I'll talk you through them all. So firstly, I'm going to add on Ozone Imager. And now we got Ozone 10 out at the moment, but in this project, I was using Ozone 9. So in this, quite simply, all I'm doing is I split the bands at about 130 and I'm focusing on this band here. What I've done, I've widened the band. So if you listen to this as we do it, listen to this. When I turn the stereo on, hear how the bass spreads in the mix. And then what I'm doing in this band here, the kind of low end of the band, I'm putting that in mono just to make sure I don't get any phase issues. Now check this in the mix. See how that bass goes from the center. And it gives you a fuller feeling. Now this is a really cool trick to utilize like this in this way, because we don't affect any sub information and we don't get any phasing issues. And this way we can really push this. So if we go to this bar here, the higher I go, the wider it goes. Now if I was to put this in the bass bus, it would have a different feeling. Because it's also kind of affecting the other instruments. So by having it on its own mid channel, I can really affect only this. This is how you can create wide bass, but also sounding really powerful and strong in the mix. All right, the next thing that we can do is this. We can bit crusher it. And in this, I'm using Logic. You can use any bit crusher. I've got the down sample to 12. Check this. So this gives it a very cool character. If I turn this on and off, very cool electronic feel. Again though, if I was to put this on the bus, it's going to affect the low end, and we spent, you know, time getting the low end right. Check it. Now we lost power and we're affecting the low end version of the mix. Now you could also, you know, you could treat 2 of these together. You could have a bit of width and a bit of bit crusher. See what that does. Even more interesting. Now this is why I like to split the bass, because you can really start to get creative with your bass. When you try to do this to your bass, you know, if you have one bass channel or your bass bus, it doesn't sound right. You know, you get phasing issues and it affects the whole bass channel. The next way is some really nice saturation. So in this, I'm using Decapitator. I've got Punish on, I've got the drive, nearly about 3, the mix at about 12 o'clock. Check this. So this is adding some real grit and character now to the sound. Let's take it off. And again, if I add this to the bass bus, it's not going to sound like this. It's going to mess the low end up. Let's hear everything in the mix. Turn it on. See how that really brings it out of the mix. Now that affects the low end, doesn't sound right. And what's really cool about this is I can add the effect now, and then I can change the mix of this in terms of how loud I want this mid bass to be. Again, you wouldn't be able to do that if you had one bass layer. So let's just mess with this a bit, and I can just change the mix structure of how the low end is sounding. Turn it off. And you can get creative with this. In this, I'm using 2 types of saturation and an imager. But really, you can get really creative with this and try different processes out. As long as you've got your bass split into two different parts, you've got your sub layer, that's where all your weight's coming from. You don't really want to be imaging your sub information, but by splitting it up, you can do this and you can get creative. You could even add a touch of reverb to this, and you've probably heard never add reverb to bass. But because we split the bass into two different channels, check this. Now we can. Because really, we're only adding reverb to this layer. If we added reverb to the whole bass bus, it's going to sound terrible. Check it. Now we're adding reverb to the sub information, which can become very messy. Check it. If we go to just the top layer, now you get a really nice feeling to the bass. So I hope you enjoyed this session and you can understand how, when and why to layer bass, and now get creative and use different types of effects on your mid top bass to achieve character and really stand out from your competition. Hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you all soon.